Hello there, and welcome to Nowhere to Hide. I'm Brian Hyde. You would think a small town would be the one place where you could avoid a lot of unnecessary political drama, but it turns out that's not the case. Actually, the little Valley School District in little old Jerome County has a pretty interesting controversy brewing, and we're going to tell you more about it coming up.
All reporters are biased, the Idaho Press Club are biased, all media, newspaper, radio.
To be completely blunt here, Brian, and there are plans to expand
indoctrination.
That's right.
Well, Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot.
That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm like crying.
Nobody wants to see
dark money is influencing policy in our state.
Well, that's not how this works.
Once again, welcome to Nowhere to Hide. I'm Brian Hyde, and today the construction sound effects in the background of our video are brought to you by the landlord who sprung for a brand new roof. Anyway, few things to work around, but if you can work around the sound, so can I. Let's talk about some trouble brewing in the Valley School District, which is part of Jerome County, but there was a supplemental levy election that was held earlier this year, and I'm going to let Rachel Hazlett from the Idaho Freedom Foundation tell you the story. This is something we're actually following up on because this is a perfect case of not a couple of private citizens disagreeing over political signage, but what appears to be the education establishment and other state offices going after a private citizen for private political opinions expressed in political signage. Let's break down the story for you. There's quite a bit here. Do your best to keep up. There's a lot to cover here. Again, you can check this out in its entirety. The article is found at idahofreedom.org. Rachel Hazlett published this a couple of weeks ago, but since then, some new information has come forward, but here are the basics. So here's what happened. For years, levies for the Valley School District would appear on the ballot and would pass with remarkably low voter turnout. That sounds about right? People don't show up for those sexy or non-sexy off-year elections, right? We want the general election, or, we want the ones that we think really count. But no, the levy elections come, and in 2023, Jerome County voters approved a supplemental levy for the Valley School District for $600,000. In other words, $300,000 for 2 years, per year for 2 years by 58 votes. Now, in the months leading up to the May 2025 consolidated election, Jerome County voters were informed that a renewal supplemental levy would be on their ballot. And in early May of 2025, the Valley School District sent a flyer to voters encouraging them to approve the levy on May 20th. But the problem is the information detailed on the flyer regarding how those funds were supposed to be spent didn't appear to match the stated purpose for the money on the ballot. Now, Idaho Code, Title 33, Chapter 8, specifies transparency requirements in elections for supplemental levies. You can see why. This is the taxpayers' money. So Rachel reports this resulted in local farmer and father of former Valley School District students, Dean Diamond, filing a complaint with the Secretary of State, which went unanswered in the days leading up to the election. Now, here's the kicker. More locals questioned the need for another levy renewal, not just Diamond. A few of them even banded together to send out their own flyer that encouraged residents to vote no on renewing the supplemental levy after 14 years. So in the meantime, Diamond created 4 homemade cardboard signs in his barn that said, "Vote no" on the upcoming levy. They were concerned about how the money was spent and the lack of transparency. Additionally, he says he phoned about 15 or 20 local neighbors and friends and encouraged them to ask the school district questions about how that money was being spent. Well, Diamond made a public records request to learn how the $600,000 was spent from the 2023 levy. Now, Rachel reports that Diamond's findings, which were provided after the election, were less than clear. According to information he gathered from confusing budget documents, he indicated the money from the last supplemental levy was not used for its stated purpose on the 2023 ballot. So it's the understanding of Diamond and another local official related to the school that the money seems to have been used as kind of a slush fund for the school district. Again, you can see where this starts to become a problem, but here's where it gets really interesting. Diamond requested to be put on the agenda for the June 16th Jerome County Board meeting to discuss what appeared to be an election violation and possible misuse of taxpayer funds. At the meeting, Diamond was presented an official envelope containing a complaint of alleged Sunshine campaign finance violations, which was signed by the Jerome County clerk. They pulled the Uno reverse card on him and decided to, make him the target. Now, the complaint of the alleged Sunshine violation was filed by none other than the superintendent of the school, who does not appear to even reside in the Valley School District. That would be Ty Jones. Jones alleged that Diamond violated Idaho Sunshine laws by distributing an unmarked anti-levy mailer and failing to report campaign expenditures. Well, the complaint dated May 28, 2025 was filed using the school district's official phone number, despite Jones later saying, no, I filed that as a private citizen. Well, after reaching out to the Secretary of State to inquire whether there was an open investigation against Diamond, the campaign finance coordinator at the Secretary of State's office says, no, there's no open investigation into the alleged Sunshine Law violation because it was under the jurisdiction of the Jerome County clerk. You following? So as of late June, after no evidence was brought forward condemning Diamond of the alleged Sunshine Law violations, the Jerome County clerk informed him, okay, you're no longer under investigation, and the pending $200 fine or possible jail term was dropped. Okay. Diamond, though, wasn't the only resident who was targeted for opposing that levy. According to reports, a vending machine business owner also faced consequences after allowing a friend to place a vote no sign in his yard before the May election. So following the August school board meeting, his 3 machines were taken from the school. They were removed, effectively terminating his business there. The report suggests that this action was taken because he did not support the school by not supporting the levy. But there's more. It gets even deeper, and this is where you really start to ask these questions. Now, you might be thinking, people file reports against political opponents for allegedly violating sunshine laws frequently as a political tactic. And Rachel says, well, that's unfortunately true. This isn't 2 private citizens in a political dispute. This is a local government entity seemingly targeting a citizen for opposing a policy during an election. And what makes this situation even more troubling is the atmosphere of intimidation and fear now surrounding civic participation in the Valley School District. Several residents say they're hesitant to put out yard signs, to speak at meetings, or even publicly question the levy because they fear retaliation from the school. And when a citizen can be targeted with legal threats or public accusations or loss of work simply for asking questions about how taxpayer funds are being spent or opposing a levy, others take notice, and they will sometimes go silent. But there's even more. Parents expressed concern that casting a no vote could have, or people expressed concern that no vote could have social or business consequences, or worse, their kids could face subtle forms of retaliation or exclusion at school. In fact, students were actually told, well, if your parents don't vote right on this levy, there won't be any school trips or field trips, rather. And this is using the kids as leverage against their parents. But when the vote is held in the very institution campaigning for the levy, Rachel says this blurs the line between civic process and institutional pressure. So there were a few questions that the Idaho Freedom Foundation would like to ask about the Valley School District's actions against levy opponents. They include, why was Dean Diamond investigated for an alleged Sunshine Law violation while the school's district's potentially misleading flyer, mailed using public resources, received no formal scrutiny from the Secretary of State or from the Jerome County clerk? That's a fair question. Number 2, why did Superintendent Ty Jones file a campaign finance complaint using the school district's official phone number if he was acting in a private capacity? Is this an abuse of public resources? Number 3, is it ethical for public officials to target private citizens for political expression without any evidence connecting them to an alleged violation? And finally, is it ethical for school employees to create a wedge between parents and students by telling students they'll miss out on school trips and the like because of their parents' voting decisions? Now, the crazy thing about this is there's still more developing with this story, even as we speak. And fingers crossed, maybe we'll get a chance to visit with Dean Diamond and others who are involved in this as this moves forward. But I would encourage you, go to idahofreedom.org, check out Rachel's excellent article. It provides so much detail, and she is still continuing to work on this, and we will continue to bring you updates. Look, it's okay to have differences of opinion, but when you start going after people in an official capacity, there's a line that's being crossed. That we just can't have. Now, a little humor. I don't know if you caught Ron Nate, who is the Idaho Freedom Foundation president, his Wednesday wind up this week, talked about a number of different issues that were going on. One of the big ones, though, was the city of Twin Falls graciously allowing its residents to plow their own residential streets, provided they pay for a $75 snowplow permit and provide proof of insurance. You heard correctly, yes. They're telling citizens, residents, if you want to clear your streets, we will let you do that for a price. So with that in mind, I have to tip my hat to Tommy Thompson and the finest parody in Idaho at the Idaho Examiner. Here's an article about Twin Falls City's next moves, new licenses for everyday life. Encouraged by early success, city officials are preparing a menu of new permit programs to streamline citizen participation in the maintenance of public services we no longer provide. So among the proposals that are under consideration, here you go. There's the pothole partner license for $100, granting residents permission to fill their own potholes using city-approved asphalt or creative alternatives like old gym mats and broken dreams. There's the lawn water runoff approval. That's $25 for homeowners who insist on watering their lawns despite city encouragement to let them die for the environment. How about the sidewalk ice chip authorization? That permit will set you back $45, but it's because chipping ice from sidewalks counts as modifying a public pathway. It also includes a laminated card that says, "I'm doing the city's job." Okay, a couple other quick ones here. There's the streetlight change permit for $80, allowing qualified residents to replace burnt out bulbs in their neighborhood, provided they first sign a 43-page liability waiver and promise not to improve visibility beyond city standards. And finally, the public gratitude tax, that's $10 per thank you. Residents who publicly thank city workers on social media will be asked to pay a small service fee for positive messaging support. I wish this is, you just can't make this stuff up. Okay, that last little bit was made up, but it makes a good point. Since when does an entity to which we pay taxes to perform certain services have the gall to turn around and take something which would be an absolute right for any one of us to do as a concerned citizen and regarding peaceful behavior and convert it into a privilege for which we must pay in order to exercise that right that's just been taken from us? I know it's a head scratcher, but there it is. I'm Brian Hyde, and this is Nowhere to Hide.
All reporters are biased. The Idaho Press Club are biased. All media, newspaper, radio.
To be completely blunt here, Brian, and there are plans to expand
indoctrination.
That's right.
Well, Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot.
That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm like crying.
Nobody wants to see
Dark money is influencing policy in our state.